Hello and welcome to Portal Stormer. I'm Kelly and we are going to be talking about depression versus sadness, general sadness. This is one in a series of videos. We're going to be talking about delving deep into the darkness, however that shows up, wherever it shows up, and also, of course, when it shows up within us, and the things that might trigger it, and the way it can explain some things that are going on in the world. So keep an eye out for future videos where I'm going to break things down, and I look forward to hopefully interacting with some of you who want to comment and share your stories. But the reason why I wanted to focus on depression is because it's quite easily used these days. People will just say it because they have a bad day or whatever. We know that in general there's sadness, sometimes several times a day, sometimes very minimal because you missed out on a food item that you wanted, or an invitation to somewhere. But sadness can be sometimes because, I'm still in this job, or I'm not earning enough money, or this relationship isn't that good, or whatever the situation. Depression is something when the sadness is compressed to a point where it's a constant. Usually with depression, it is something that you're in it for a while, and usually it could be a day or two, but usually it's something where it's built up to the point where the sadness started happening so much that it started compounding, and then you're depressed. Now, when you are depressed, of course, everyone's got a different idea of what that means for them, and of course it depends on what doctor you see and who diagnoses you, if ever you do get diagnosed. But what I used to think about depression is a little different to how I think about it now, especially since I went through this transformation earlier in the year when I did a retreat all on my own and really turn some things around. But it's also shaken up my ideas about what I had always thought was, what I was told when I was younger was endogenous depression, meaning, it's just something that's cellular or chemical, it's within you. And when you're told something like that, it's like, okay, well, it's something I can never get rid of, but then how do I manage it? And I decided never to go on medication for it. I did actually once, I lie. For 2 months I was on Zoloft, and I didn't notice any change at all, and I wondered if it was more, not so much a chemical thing, but maybe emotional or behavioural. So I did take myself off the medication. I'm a bit like that. If I've got to see results pretty quickly. And the doctor said, you should have stayed on it for at least 6 months. But then I saw all the stories about people back in the 80s going through murderous actions and thoughts towards their loved ones when they were on, what was it? It was Prozac, I think, before Zoloft came around, at least in Australia where I was. And I had read those stories in the Rolling Stones that I used to collect, and I decided, okay, well, I don't want to go the chemical, the medical route, the medicine route. I want to just try to deal with this. But over the decades, of course, that was sort of like a half-assed attempt, because you read self-help books, you watch documentaries, you see a lot of shows like the Oprah Winfrey Show, which was really big back in the 90s, talking to experts, sometimes really good shows, sometimes especially when they started talking about spirit all the time. But I'll talk about that in another video, because sometimes it's just real hard work you got to do on yourself to dig out the stuff that does trigger the depression or what have you. And what I found, it just became something I would let myself slip into. If something was too much, if life was too much, I would slip into it. And I ended up just operating in that lower vibration for all that time, thinking at times where I could rise up and actually be who I wanted to be or do what I wanted. But I wondered if the depression, or me slipping into it and then pulling it over me like a comforting blanket, helped keep me down. So since the retreat in January, I've kind of learned to be a little bit more, not harsh, but a little bit more real with myself, so that and I have felt some dips since the retreat, but I haven't slumped or plummeted into the depths it I felt where I just couldn't crawl out of it. But I've really amazed myself over the years being able to still put one foot ahead of the other. And of course I questioned myself, thinking, was that because I wasn't really depressed? You can get too much in your head, but usually that's the problem with depression. You're too much in your head. You're thinking too much and often focusing on the wrong things. And I found it really beneficial to start just doing that. Well, hang on a minute, why are we just going down this road? Let's bring it back and analyze it for what it is. And doing that, I'm finding I'm getting quicker and quicker in being able to snap myself back, because it's very easy to, when you see the patterns, certain people behaving a certain way, or you feeling a certain way, or responding a certain way, you think, oh, go, here we go. And before you know it, you're down in that slump again. And I'm fortunate, I feel good about the fact that I'm able to keep that raft on top of the surface of the lake. That's often the struggle that you have with depression. People with depression will tell you that sometimes it's hard to even get out of bed. I remember when I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist center for a year way back. One of the people there told me that he had spent a whole year in bed depressed, and I couldn't even fathom that, and still now it's like mind-boggling. But he said nothing meant anything, and if it wasn't for his mother making sure he was fed and cleaning himself at least, he said he virtually did nothing but slept. And he said it was because he just realised that the world that he thought he was growing up to be in, a part of, was not the world that he'd thought. And, he's a very introverted person, and very sensitive, so that's perfectly understandable. But the idea of being that down and that lonely and feeling like you don't have anybody, it's a terrible thing to not only go through, but if it's something that that you can get yourself out of, but you've gotten used to using it as an excuse or using it for sympathy from others. And this is just being brutally honest with yourself. And if you really want to help yourself and get over it, it's best not to just talk about it all the time. And yet that's what I'm doing here. But I wanted to make that point. We can talk with each other about it and talk about the triggers, talk about how we get ourselves out of it. But to turn it into your identity, your personality, that, yeah, this is who I am, it can be kind of dangerous. I see some people out there talking about bed rotting, and I understand that. Probably no one understands that more than me. I love the idea of, I just want to do what I want at any time. I might have ADHD, I don't know. But I want to focus on my work, my writing, my content creation and all that. But that's got to bring me money. So of course I've got to do a job, and that's like anybody. We've all got to keep paying the bills. So I've just had to learn to not allow that to depress me like it used to, because I know I'm the one with the power. If I want to change things, and I am looking for something else, just to reduce the amount of people coming at me. And I think for a lot of us, especially if you're like me, an INFJ, or an introverted or an intuitive introvert and all that jazz, highly sensitive as well, just dealing with people in general is a pain anyway. And I do temper that feeling with the knowledge that other people have to deal with me too. So being a stoic person, it's important to let that pendulum swing come back all the time, just to test your theories. Because one thing I can't stand, especially now that I'm older, is living my life a lie, or living along some paradigm someone else created for me, or going by rules that someone else said, or what have you. Whatever rings true to me is right. And when it comes to the sadness, it's easy to deal with just with a simple statement. Well, really, is this the worst that could happen? No. In 100 years, no one's going to care. And it's not like I'm living in a war-torn country. But having said that, I will say, whether it's sadness or depression, you can't always compare your situation with someone else, even if they've had virtually an identical upbringing, because your internal makeup and what's, created who you are now could be totally different, or at least different enough that your experiences will be different. So I will apologise. I often have my cats wandering and wondering what's going on. But with depression, of course, that also links in with the the word we're not allowed to say, which is ironic. And I just want to have a little rant about that, because it's not like we're out there spewing it into people's faces, where, when we're talking about mental health and trauma, those words are there, and it's like almost keep them hidden because people are triggered by them. But my attitude is I'm triggered by people being triggered by words that actually do reflect an experience that was true, that was real, that happened to you. But you can't talk about it in public. And I know this is a public forum, so to a certain extent we have a social contract where, in regards to how we behave with each other. But I think that the certain types of people who might click on this video, who look for this kind of content, have probably said those words before. And to have to resort to saying words like grape, SA, and ending yourself, or whatever it is for the other naughty word, to me it's just like all these pretenses. That's something that depresses me sometimes, because I don't like playing games or playing along with things just because some people might be hurt, or some people feel threatened or triggered, because it's not like I'm out there with an axe saying, everybody line up, I'm getting ready for you. It's just words. So to be upset by words really annoys me, because I tend to be I can be quite vicious with my words, and that's something I am working on. That's another darkness thing that I've talked about in the video with some of the things I dealt with my mother, who was a narcissistic alcoholic. But other people, let me get back to that at least. I mean, I did my little side thing about language, but other people is a big deal to me. I like helping people, but helping the masses means you take it all, warts and all. You throw out a big net and you've got to deal with whatever comes at you. And in my job, that's what we have to do. And for the most part, the people are fantastic. They're there, they're proactive, they want to meet you halfway. They don't need their hands held. They don't need to trauma dump on you every time they walk in the door. They don't expect you to hold their hand through everything and fix every single problem. So those people, the ones who do, they're pretty proactive. Yes, they need help, but they're here, they'll take and run with whatever I give them. Those ones I love helping, and will continue in whatever capacity, in whatever job, helping those kinds of people. But I have been, for years, really annoyed with helping the arseholes. The people who are used to putting their hand out and getting things given to them over and over and over again, year after year, expecting everyone else to fix their problems without them lifting a finger. And it's the mentality and the way they come at you when they do come in, this desperation, like they know it's probably coming down to the wire, they're probably going to get benefits cut off for whatever reason, or it's not enough, they're about to be kicked out of their apartment because they haven't paid the rent. All of a sudden now it's everybody else's problem, everybody else's fault. They come in yelling, panicking, knowing that that routine might make you freak out and do whatever you can to help them. Those sort of manipulative, coercive people really give me the shits. And when you have to deal with them every now and again, we don't get them every day, but it's the expectation they put on you, the overblown expectations, and thinking that you are responsible now for everything in their life. And that, for me personally, triggers back to when I was a kid, and that's what happened to me with my mum. I was the oldest, therefore I had to lead by example, which was ironic because she never did, and she was the adult. Being responsible for what my brothers did, even though I could not control them, and also being ridiculed in front of other people. But also the expectations. When she was drunk, it was always I had to fix everything. I had to make the dinner, or I had to do this, or I had to do that. It was always, Kelly has to do it because she's the oldest. You should know better. It was always that kind of routine. So now I know when people come at me, it kind of flows in that same energy. The overblown expectations, the pushing off the responsibility onto me. And sometimes irrationally I can backpedal 100 miles per hour when someone comes at me wanting something done, because even though it's just someone asking for something, to me it's an attack. And I have to be really careful, especially since the retreat. It's amazing how I've flipped and realised I don't have to take that shit anymore, but I do have to temper my response, because I have noticed that when people come at me with that routine now, I get really vicious. I mean, this is something else about dark thoughts, which hinges on depression, because it's after a while you just get, what's the point? And you just withdraw into yourself and just block, block, block. And I'm trying to be open, but block the certain types of people. It's a very delicate surgery happening at the moment. And also to keep my darkness at bay, because I can see it simmering there. Just waiting, just almost begging me for an excuse to be released. But I'm really happy that I've got a really strong hold over that. Worst case scenario, I could take myself to the bathroom and sit down, whatever I've got to do. But I realised when these people come at me, I have to stop and think when I do that to people too. So, but the interesting thing about that is I'm the kind of person I don't ask for help. Now, my husband, or whoever, who's fantastic, my husband, of course, is the only one who's here for me, actually, when it comes to the way he should be and also the way I need. It's fantastic. So I've got him. But with other people, when I'm out and about, I will usually just, if people do the dry begging routine, panicking in front of me, expecting me to panic for them, therefore I step up and say, okay, I'll do it just to stop people panicking. That's going to stop. But I do have to temper it and then think about the times when I do it. So oftentimes when we're doing all these things, when dealing with other people, whether they're manipulative people, whether they're in your face, whether they're trauma dumpers, whether they've got overblown expectations, for whatever reason, when you're the kind of person that you're already highly sensitive and already not good with mingling with others, or you might have, like me, learned how to, even though it's annoying, you get to the point where it's funny, I just lost my train of thought. But just dealing with other people in general, it's hard when you're an introverted person. So, but you do it anyway. You put on the face just because you want to keep getting a paycheck, paying lip service to it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with recognizing that dealing with people in and of itself can be something that can plummet you into depression, especially when you've got people around you who aren't playing nice, and you've got to put on those different masks just to deal with that, and then you've got to be a different person over here. And we all do that, but those of us who are highly sensitive and who might be dealing with past trauma, it creates a whole new cloud inside. And I find, like, people have told me, for example, when they've known something's wrong, because I've got a bad resting bitch face, but I'm also, my emotions show on my face straight away. And I even tend to be so, reactionary and dramatic, because that's how I learnt to be, to match my mum's energy, just to shut her up, when she was going off. So now, just to show people that I really hear them and understand what they're going through and feel for them, I will be extra, like, over the top. And I realise why I do that. So I'm trying to bring that back, because sometimes people get scared by me because I'm so animated in my face, but because I try to control myself, I end up really animated in my face, saying really dreadful things sometimes just to get people out of my face. So I'm sitting there like this this turbo little angry machine, and I try not to do that. But then I wouldn't have those problems if I didn't have certain people in my face. So therefore, I'm looking for something else where I don't have to deal with those kind of people. So I've got a plan, I know what to do, and therefore that's what's keeping me suspended up above the depression, because it's taking a while to find something else, but I'm not going to devolve into tears or become a big baby just because of that. But by the same token, I am being very careful to not allow my depression to shoot up like lava when someone does push my buttons, because I can just feel it boiling. It comes right here, and I just, when I'm in traffic, I've got to watch that too, because you know what idiots are like on the road. And here I am going off on a waffle, but sadness, I mean, to me sadness is just nothing. It's just like a little laugh, like a whereas depression is a deep chuckle in the soul, and it's not a chuckle, but it is a roar that ends up just staying there and just turning into mud and sludge, which feeds us dark thoughts. For me, one thing that can plummet me into really dark thoughts is just people, the world, what people do to the world, what they do to animals, children, the current politicals, how we can just allow all the arseholes to just jump in and do what they want while the good people stand by and let it happen. When I think about those things and I start spiraling down, it's like it's hopeless, because not only do I feel bad in my life, but it's hopeless elsewhere in the world too. And when I'm in that downward spiral and I'm thinking about those terrible things, the one thing I have to say to myself, and it is the thing that works, that helps me spiral back up, is you're doing this to yourself. You're choosing to think about the negative sides. Yes, there's heaps of things. Well, what about all the other things? You could heap a lot more things on top. So why are you choosing to funnel your energy and channel your energy and your attention to that, when just thinking about the good people out there who are doing excellent work, healing and saving animals and children from trafficking, and people who are just silently, without telling anybody, helping people out, whether it be financial or so on. When I start thinking about those things, and I even got on YouTube and watched some dodo videos of animals being saved and loved and cared for, it restores my faith in humanity. And then I remember, even if it's a smaller amount of people who are good in this world, surely the power of all those good people coming together. Harry, shut up. Here's another one. The dry beggar. Aren't you? All those, if all the good people were to come together, hopefully that would be enough energy. But here's the thing about good people: they don't usually like to step over and be the arsehole they might need to be sometimes. That's why bad people get away with what they do, because good people can be pussies. And I'm saying that to be as nice as possible, but you are polite. Oh, what are you doing breaking into my house? What's going on? Next thing, God knows what happens to you and your family. So, and that's the same with depression. I mean, sometimes you've really got to stand up for yourself. See what is going on. I am a 58-year-old woman. I tend to wander in my thoughts sometimes, but other times I can be crystal clear. That's another thing that sort of depresses me a bit. But anyway, this isn't about me and what depresses me. It's about how we deal with depression. I don't want the depression to turn into something that will swallow me whole. The idea now that I'm on the other side of the retreat is amazing to me, that even just the thought of allowing myself to wallow in self-pity makes me sick to the stomach. And he makes me sick to the stomach. No, he doesn't. Harry, we've got a lot of strays, and we've taken a few in to take care of. And funny, it's not 5 o'clock yet, but usually 5 p.m. it's arsenic hour. All the cats decide they want to go nuts. But anyway, I wanted to just talk about the sadness and the depression, how they are two different things. I really like to keep them separate. I do think there's separate layers, like sedimentation in the rivers or whatever. You got sadness, and then it gets worse, and I'm not having a good day, and then it's I am stuck in the mud. And here's another thing, and I don't know if other people are talking about it, but when you are coming out of a depression, when you are feeling fresh and you think, okay, I'm getting a hold of things, I'm putting one foot ahead of the other again, I'm back at work, I'm talking with people, that little period there is the most dangerous period for you, because one little thing that goes wrong could plummet you even further than you were before. And that's something that I've had to keep in mind since I came back from the retreat. But because even though I've got a handle on it, and it makes me ill to think of sinking back into those horrible depths, which it really is horrible, because you don't know which way is up. The thought of that is just terrifying, and I just want to acknowledge that now I'm just dealing with the dips. The dips aren't a deep dive in, but I understand when those dips, I almost appreciate them. And I think that's the same with sadness. You know, sadness is going to happen. You can't be happy all the time, otherwise you'd be insane. But it's the same with being depressed. I was insane for such a long time, and yet operating in the world, still able to maintain a job, still able to maintain certain friendships, although I have, as I've gotten older, just gotten the snippety snip as I've gotten older, just for sanity. But I know now, going into my later years, I don't need to be sleepwalking through my life like I have. And I think that's what depression does sometimes. And even depression can also become a breeding ground for evil, because all of a sudden you're lashing out at people. And especially when people use it as an excuse. You see a lot of people when they go to, if they go to court, or they're going to be put in jail for things that they do, it's always someone else's fault. And it was interesting in the 80s, I remember we all started talking about what makes a serial killer, and talking about dark traits and everything. But I remember people were just like, in the audience salivating over it. When they were talking, for example, Oprah Winfrey, she had a show once when they were talking to all the people who knew his family, Jeffrey Dahmer, before all that happened. And there was a neighbour, and all talking about him, how they felt he was really alone. Apparently his mother was very emotionally unavailable, such and such. But everyone started making excuses for bad behaviour. From that point on, I noticed over the next couple of decades, you'd see all these shows, people would talk about them in depth. They were talking about the perpetrator in depth, but no one looked at the victims and what they went through. It was always, oh, she was a nice girl, she blah, blah. But now let's talk about the serial killer. And then, of course, people's dark sides linking into that. Oh, I want to know more, because we're ghouls. We can't help but know, or want to know. But what I noticed was then all of a sudden all these excuses over the years, and there were books written about these brand new syndromes, and some doctor wanted to make a name for themselves, decided they'd create a syndrome. Then we end up with all these excuses for bad behaviour. And of course, a lot of, especially younger people who like to, and I'm not poo-pooing younger people, good luck to you and everything, I love you. But when you use all those things as excuses, I can't help hurting people because I'm depressed, or I've got bipolar. That's another thing. People who come in throw their mental illness at you as a ready-made initial excuse before you've even got to know them. Just so you know, I'm bipolar, I'm this, I'm that. Therefore, everything that flows on from now on, I can't help it, I'm sorry. So I don't accept that either. I've known people who are schizophrenic and so on, who are able to stow that shit and to behave themselves in public, properly medicated, of course, and people who aren't, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have to deal with you, I'm not responsible for you. And that sounds harsh, but that's how I'm getting, because I can't allow certain people and certain events and situations to drag me down. I refuse, but oftentimes that does mean blocking certain energies, certain people, and stopping certain activities. And a couple of those I'm still dealing with, but I do definitely understand the difference between sadness and depression. I mean, I've had so many people use that as an excuse, whether it be at work with clients saying, I can't do anything, you do it for me, or whether it be other people trying to explain away bad behaviour, I'm depressed. Well, you know, to me, that's just like, I've got gas. I mean, deal with it, you know. Any other diagnosed problem like schizophrenia or even bipolar to a degree, and other illnesses that are difficult to control with or without medication. I get it, but we still, as a society, have a right to defend ourselves. We don't have to open the door, let you in, and just take all the abuse because you've got a problem. Because there are a lot of us who are out there helping people who've probably got a hell of a lot more problems than those people do, and yet we're the ones who stow it, keep it to ourselves, and yet continue to let other people dump on us. And I think that's something that needs to be stopped, just for all of us, just to do, whether it be in your family, if you've got a narcissist or someone who likes to, you know, attack everybody for no reason, because they didn't get any money when everyone else did, but it just turns out everybody else is working. You know, there's so many different scenarios where you've got to deal with people, whether it be in your family or in your close friend group or at work. When it comes to just navigating through life, it's harder when you're young and you're at the mercy of your parents. But once you move out, there's got to be a point where you track yourself, where you get an idea, hey, I'm dipping here, and you realise, oh, look at the situation I'm in, look at the people look at the person I'm going out with or whatever. It's important to pull yourself up every now and again, do an assessment, do a proper assess and review session with yourself, whether that's journaling, whether it's talking to other people or with a therapist or what have you, just to see how you're travelling, and also to keep track of yourself and to make sure that you're not feeding into the depression or you're not opening the door for yourself and allowing it. It is delicious to slip into quietness. When you need to withdraw, it's imperative to withdraw, to lick your wounds, to journal, to figure out what's the next step. That's why depression, I feel, is sometimes a necessary thing that happens in life to force us to take stock of ourselves, what we're doing, excuse Kerouac on my shoulder, in order to be able to move forward, because I've always felt through my life that I've been moving forward, I'm writing, but I wasn't dealing with it properly because the lens I was looking through was really full of a lot of hate, unexpressed rage towards my mum because of the things she said and did to me, but also towards family members who I knew what was going on but never did anything about it, and then who would turn on me later on when I would be out of sorts, whether it be drunk at a party. And I was never abusive. I was a happy drunk, but also an annoying drunk. I would be told, oh, you're just like your mother. And to be told that by people who stood by and allowed everything to happen, I wish I had a harsher response at the time, but it did upset me because they also liked to tell me, especially my grandmother, who herself I'm sure was just like me, but she'd lash out. She said to me once, oh, you've got such a bad temper. And I so wanted to say to her at the time, but we're sitting at the dinner table with other family members, you know, what do you think that is? Because on my father's side, everybody repressed everything. On my mother's side, everything was bleh. So, but my nana had a way of being aggressive, but coming across as just trying to do the right thing, you know. So on both sides of the family had females who were quite manipulative, but also my mum was the opposite. She would express the rage fully, and my grandmother would be snide or snarky, or say something underhanded. So anyway, so I'm going to be talking about this another time too. I just thought I'd just do this quick first thing for this new series I'm doing, Beyond the Darkness, because shining the light on these dark things, having those epiphanies and those realizations is what's going to help us get forward. Medication and contemplating your navel forever only helps for so long. Yes, journal, yes, care about yourself, self-care and all that, but then dust yourself off and pick yourself up and keep going for your own sake, if not for anybody else. So anyway, I hope this was okay with you, and I'm sorry about the cats. This one behind me is actually Domino, and he can be a little bugger, but they're all just innocent animals, and aren't we? Anyway, I hope to talk to you again soon, so take care.